at our next masterclass series for Digital Catapult. We've been running a whole host of these masterclasses over this period of the last year, which has obviously been a crazy year for all of us. And I think quite fittingly, it is the first day of lockdown. So happy lockdown, everybody. And I think therefore it couldn't be more apt for us to be talking about some of the technology that's actually being prompted by this pandemic that we've been having this year. So do not worry, it is not just me talking at you today at all. In fact, we've got a load of experts that will be joining over the next 90 minutes. So from Digital Catapult, you've got Aki Javanan, who's our Senior Immersive Experience Designer. We've got Alicia Amakaji, who is the Research and Policy Analyst. And then joining us from to bring external knowledge and expertise, we've got Matt Corral, who is the Design Director at Ultraleap, and Catherine Morgan, who is the Director of Ocean Labs at Ocean Outdoor. So I'm really excited to have such a diverse range of speakers, and we're going to be talking about things both from looking at the design principles of this sort of technology, this haptics and this touchless technology, as well as looking at some of the latest real tech that's out there. That's where Matt's going to be able to tell us more about what they've been up to at Ultraleap. And then looking at some of the applications and how Ocean Outdoor have actually started to use touchless technology within the advertising experiential campaigns that they've been doing recently. So first of all, as I say, this is not just about me talking. So I'd very much like to get some of your interactivity as well. So let's start off with an interactive poll and get some of your opinion as to what's going on in your world. So it's going to pop up on your screen now, and you're going to be able to vote. And the question is, are you considering, or have you already started initiatives around touch-free solutions? And you've got 3 answers there. Yes, I've noticed initiatives, but from outside my company. Yes, our company are developing new projects around these technologies, or no, we're not considering anything, and I haven't really seen any initiatives. So just really quickly, if you can just click on an answer there, and then we'll bring up the results. That's great. Oh, we're noticing a very clear outcome here, somewhat different to the US elections. Okay, brilliant. Here we go. So perfect. So I think you should all be able to see those results on your screen now. So it looks like the majority of people here are saying that yes, your companies are developing new projects around these technologies. Okay, and then equally, those of you that aren't developing in your companies, you have noticed initiatives from outside your company. So that's really, really interesting. Not a single person said that they haven't noticed anything, which is good. That means we're all in the right place. So just before we get started, for those of you that don't know anything about Digital Catapult, I know there may be some people that are joining for the first time, and there also are many people, I'm sure, that have been with us for a number of years in terms of coming to events. So we are the leading innovation centre for the UK, looking at advanced digital technology. And our whole purpose is to accelerate the early adoption of advanced digital technology across the UK. What we mean by that in terms of advanced digital technology is we look at these 4 areas. So we're looking at future networks, which includes 5G and IoT. We look at immersive technologies, which is all things XR, and haptics, which is very much where today's presentation comes in. We look at artificial intelligence and machine learning, and more recently, we've started to look an awful lot at distributed systems, so blockchain basically, but outside of the financial sector. So anything from startups to the enterprises that adopt these technologies are of interest to us, and this is what we do. So we have a whole bunch of facilities that we build and we operate, including 5G test beds and immersive labs. We have a huge array of innovation programs and accelerator programs, some of which some of you may know, Creative XR, Augmentor. We also get our hands very dirty with research and development. Lots of big collaborative research and development projects we're a part of, joining up the ecosystem to help further long-term R&D. And then equally, we work with enterprise itself. So we work on a commercial basis as a design and technology consultancy to help industry to actually bring some of these solutions to market a little bit quicker. And this is why we think we're a little bit special and a little bit different to other consultancies out there. We've got a whole bunch of technologists. As you're going to hear today from one of our design practitioners, Aki, we've got a very unique service design and design thinking team, which can help people to work through their problems and try and get to the right solution rather than just throwing technology at it. We've got this huge array of different technology startups that all join us through our programs. And we run an awful lot of accelerators, as I mentioned. And then ultimately, we've also got these facilities. So I don't really want to babble on much longer at all. Instead, I want to take us to this topic. I mean, as we all know, the problem of safe interactivity is not a new one at all. There's been stats even 10 years ago when people were surveyed in London saying that they were very, very aware of quite how dirty some of the surfaces were in environments, in tube buttons, touch screens, ticket machines. But of course, COVID has really shone a new light on all of this. And actually more recently, 88% of people think that touchscreens are unhygienic. And really, if consumer behavior is going to change, then we have one of the biggest redesign problems on our hands that we've had for a long time. Much of this interactivity in terms of how we go about our daily lives has not massively changed for the last few decades. So this could be a big turning point in us being able to get the information we need, get the tickets that we need, and have the fun that we actually want in public spaces in a whole new way. So let's dive into that design challenge and the opportunities that this technology is actually bringing us to kind of combat and bring about safe interactivity. So I'm going to initially hand over to Aki, who is, as I say, the immersive experience researcher here at Digital Catapult, and he's going to be able to share a little bit more about how we can consider and design for new touchless interactivity. So I'm just going to hand over my screen now. I will stop here. And then Aki, if you are able to take control. Brilliant. Wonderful. All right, over to you, Aki. Thank you very much.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Emily. I'll just switch on to my presentation mode. So bear with me. And yes, so I'm going to share some of the thinking that we at Digital Catapult have been doing around this topic of touchless interactivity, and namely design thinking. So that's probably a term that is an approach that is familiar to many of you, and my talk is really about how we can apply it to this particular topic. And so, yes, we believe that we will be experiencing this shift to touchless solutions. And so the sensors that we might be quite familiar with this faucet in the picture will become more commonplace. But there's not really a one-size-fits-all solution in this space. And therefore, it's very dependent on the use case. How do you go about coming up with solutions that actually users out there are willing to use? And that's where design thinking really comes in. It provides this holistic approach to thinking about the user experience in this new space. And so what we're really doing at Catapult is putting together like a package and offering around design thinking that ultimately leads to prototyping these kinds of solutions quickly and cheaply, I would say. So trying to empathize with the use case, the problem that the touchless aspect is trying to solve, and then iterating by ideating, defining the problem and discovering its details and testing from there. And even if and in my talk, I will come to practical functional prototypes in the end, we also want to emphasize that we also want to map and understand the broader context of where this using a touchless solution happens, because that ultimately also decides and factors into how people adopt and engage with these kinds of touchless solutions. So customer journey mapping is very much part of our process. And also, I mean, we've been doing quite a lot of work in this with this approach in different areas. So one of our areas that we look at is creative industries. And so even if that's quite a different angle in itself to look at, for instance, location-based entertainment and so on and so forth, and how audiences conceive and experience those kinds of productions, still it's an example where we've adopted a similar breakdown of that experience into a customer journey. And why this is also relevant is that when people go into location-based entertainment venues, and if they, for instance, take part in an immersive experience, they might meet and have to engage with the technology that is not every day for them. And therefore, understanding how to spell out what that technology means and what its unique capabilities is a similar problem in the creative space as it is in the space that we discussed today. So these touchless solutions will not be familiar to most of their users from the get-go, and therefore thinking about the journey in a structured manner is very useful and sort of solves some of the or questions some of the assumptions that you might otherwise have. And one way to break this down, I'm referring here to Foolproof, which is an agency that has done some research in London around this topic. And we also believe, as this breakdown here shows, that there will be a gradual shift. It won't happen overnight. So, but anyhow, we are going increasingly from, let's say, for example, in the retail space, from direct human-to-human interaction to maybe at this moment in time, the first shift will be more towards our smartphones, our personal devices, and using them in a contactless manner, or other wearable devices. But eventually, there will be more solutions in public spaces, for instance, where sensors and similar recognition technologies enable these touchless experiences, and that, for instance, might enable more throughput in scale of customers or audiences or whatever the cohort is. And now, if you, as we saw from the poll, quite a few of you have already given thought to this issue, but you might be able to relate to this problem that when you first sort of have this intuition and you recognize the problem that my business or my company or in my field, there should be a transition to touchless solutions, then it might still feel quite overwhelming of where to start from. And this flowchart that you see here is our way to recognize and find that initial direction, because as I said before, there's not just one solution out there, and these problems are in their nature so-called wicked problems, that there's not one absolute solution. So you might want to think that, okay, is my touchless solution voice-based, or is it gesture-based, or even gaze-based, or does it then require mid-air haptics? And that's something that we will hear a case study from Matt from Ultraleap later. But anyhow, so this is our way in our process to find that initial direction before we start ideating and coming up with particular specific solutions. And way that we do it is that we try to facilitate a generation of lots of ideas quickly, and a particular format that we do here is a workshop around sketching. And this doesn't mean that everybody has to learn to draw. What we actually do is we use visual online collaboration environments, services like Mural that some of you might be familiar with. And what we've done is basically created a space where participants in the workshop can quickly use visual resources to mock up and make collages and visually communicate their ideas with the rest of the team, for the team to criticize and iterate and build on those ideas. So this is the workshop format that we've been running and sort of iterating and perfecting during the last months. And the typical output then is something like this: a visual sketch of an interaction sequence with a touchless interface. So this example that you see here is a bit more forward-looking. So even if we very much recognize that most of these interactions will happen in a physical location, and we don't assume that people would for instance, use any sort of wearable advanced technologies in a few years, still the same principles apply. You can sketch and create specifications for further functional prototyping quite quickly with this approach. And one thing that I want to be very clear is that we don't, I'm starting to bring now immersive technologies into this topic and how they can be used to help on this journey. But I certainly don't want to say that we envisage a future, even short term, where people would go about interacting with different solutions in, for instance, virtual reality. That's not what we're saying. But what we are saying is that the power of XR and immersive technologies is that you can use these technologies in a fast and cheap way to prototype, to stage, and to simulate those physical encounters with touchless technologies. And so what really enables this is the latest advancements in these technologies, especially hand tracking. So those of you who have experience of trying out virtual reality or even working with it know that most of the time you use controllers, something like this. But in recent developments, hand tracking, so the fact that the headset tracks your hands as if you would be doing gestures in actual reality, that's really the key thing that enables prototyping and emulating these touchless interface solutions. So the video that you see here is from somebody basically reproducing their home in VR and then imagining and prototyping different user interface solutions. And obviously, there's lots of touching going on in this example. So if you look past that, the point of this video is here that the hand tracking that you see here is really the enabling technology for that rapid prototyping and exploration of ideas with touchless solutions. So I'll end with a couple of examples of how we have been doing this process from those sketches to functional prototypes or even further to proof of concepts. So for instance, here you see a couple of sketches having to do with different solutions produced basically in a day over a workshop format among participants. And then what we can do is move on to using immersive technologies, like in this case, we've used Microsoft HoloLens, which is a mixed reality headset, to imagine this scenario that I'll play now, which is basically what you see there is a fast food restaurant scenario where you use a touchless solution to make your selections at an information kiosk, but without touching it. So you see the hands hovering over the selection menu, and when the person keeps their hand on top of that user interface, it confirms the selections. So that's something that we created basically from sketch and from the initial idea in 2 to 3 days. And the idea here is that obviously now you are able to then share this prototype and let people try it and evaluate its feasibility in a functional manner. So rather than thinking about these ideas on paper, so to speak, you can actually have a go and evaluate the feel of the experience. My final example is a bit more forward-looking. So as I said, even if we don't envisage a short-term future where people would go about with wearable devices, we do believe slightly longer term, for instance, that lightweight augmented reality glasses will be a consumer technology. And this next functional prototype is an implementation of the sketch that you saw earlier having to do with the PIN code solution. So it's a restaurant food ordering scenario. Actually, you're paying for the food using a touchless solution that is based on would be based on augmented reality glasses. I'll just play that video now. So you basically see the cost of your meal, then you acknowledge that you want to pay, and then you have a specific solution the idea, of course, there being also that you don't want others to see your pin code, so that's where you hide. That's why you hide it in your palm. All right, and yeah, so even if we arrive at very particular solutions, those functional prototypes, then I just want to circle back to the user journey and the broader service context that I spoke about earlier. So as part of this process, we then also go back to that broader journey and understand that, okay, how is this part of your business and your customer's journey, and try to place it in a fitting way and evaluate it also in that service context. So yes, that's it from me. I'm happy to take questions towards the end of the session when we will skim through the Q&A. But I think just before I hand it over to Emily, I think we will have our next poll. Isn't that right?
Brilliant. Yeah, let's thank you so much, Aki. That's really, really great to see, as you say, that you can be testing these ideas up without having to actually build them in full. So next question, just to get everyone active again. So I want to think about whether we think this is a long-term trend. So do you think COVID-19 will impact the usage of touchless technologies long-term? And basically, I mean, do we think these are going to stick around beyond next year and the year after? So your answers are yes, this sort of the adoption of these sorts of technologies is already noticeable. Yes, but it's going to be a slow and gradual change in consumer behavior, but you think they're going to stick around. Or no, the vaccine's going to arrive and we're going to revert back to the same old interactivity that we've been using for years that involves an awful lot of touch on surfaces. So what do you think? I think that, there we go, that's popping up. So if you can just vote away. Do you think this is going to be sticking around, or do you think it will just disappear once COVID has got a solution, we hope? Okay, all right, okay, well, it looks like we've got some clear results coming through. There we go, thank you very much, we've got those shared. So yeah, for those of you that voted there, you're saying that you do think that this is going to stick around. It's going to be a slow and gradual change because of the behavioural change that's necessary to make it stick. But yes, you do think, most of you, that this is something that's here to stay. Okay, that's brilliant. That's good to know. Just a quick reminder before I introduce Matt. Please do keep typing in your questions in the Q&A. Also, you can upvote different questions there by using the thumbs up. So if you see someone else's question, you think, oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask, or it's similar to what I was going to ask, then please upvote it. But next up, I'm going to hand over to our next speaker because there's so much really good information to try and pack into this time. And next up, we've got Matt Corral, who is the design director at Ultraleap. For those of you that don't know, and Matt will probably say a bit more, but Ultraleap are a fascinating UK technology startup that have got to be really up there in one of the few that have acquired a Silicon Valley technology company in order to grow their ability and grow their technology offering. And an awful lot has been going on for them in the last year. So Matt, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can tell us more about the company and about some of this amazing technology that you're working on at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Bear with me whilst I do the screen share thing here.
Excellent. Looks like all is working.
Working good?
Yeah, we can see that. Brilliant. All right, Matt, I'll leave it with you.
Lovely. So yeah, thank you for having me. My name's Matt Corral. I'm the design director at Ultraleap. Ultraleap are I guess we count as a scale-up now. I think we're over 100 people, with headquarters in Bristol in the UK, and then an office over in San Francisco as well. And we basically have two core technologies that we're working on bringing to market in different industries. So on the left, some really good hand tracking, fundamentally. Hand tracking, in case you don't know, is tracking your hands in 3D space. So it's delivered by that little camera plugged into that laptop there. And we can track your hands very accurately and very fast. We get sort of a full skeletal model. We know where all your joints are. So that enables you to then control things like cars and computers using just your hands in space. The other technology over on the right is mid-air haptics. So that fundamentally is using very small amounts of ultrasound to deliver the rough sensation of touch to your fingers. It's a bit like being able to feel something that isn't there in the air. And why would we use that? Well, when you combine these two together in, say, something like virtual reality, you can control it with your hands, but you could, say, pick up a virtual object and actually feel it and get a rough sensation of touch from it. I'm mainly going to be talking about hand tracking today, but happy to answer whatever questions come later. So we're using hand tracking, or we're introducing it to a whole range of different industries at the moment, from in-car interfaces like controlling your navigation, your music through moving your hands in the air, to virtual reality, where our tech is getting embedded into some manufacturers' headsets now. And like Aki mentioned earlier, that lets you put down the controllers and then just use your hands to control the game or control the experience. And we're also being used in 2D screens in public places, such as digital advertising and kiosks. And that's what I'm going to be telling you a bit more about today. I head up the design team at Ultraleap, so our job fundamentally is to define how people should be interacting in all these different use cases with this new tech. We're trying to find the most natural and intuitive ways to do it. And frankly, it's fascinating as a designer because nobody's really written the rule book for this stuff yet. So together with other companies in this space, we're trying to start writing that rule book. So I'm going to be telling you a bit today about a particular project we've been doing over most of this year. Like everyone else, we've had a pretty weird year, and me and my team all went home in March. Interestingly, about that time, the phone started ringing at Ultraleap a lot from companies that make public 2D screen kiosks. So touchscreen kiosks that you might see used for ATMs, fast food menus, train ticket machines, things like that. And they were saying to us, look, we know that the public are getting concerned about hygiene. That was an issue before the pandemic, and COVID has only sent that through the roof. Is it possible to turn these things into touch-free experiences so that people feel reassured and feel confident that it's safe to use them? And these companies are looking at a range of technologies, from voice to how you might use your mobile screen to touchless, the kind of thing that Ultraleap does. So we got asked to, project for this year, is it possible to convert existing kiosks to work in a touchless way? We started this in March. We had to deliver a proof of concept by October, and we hadn't really done anything quite like this before. We knew it was technically possible, but the questions were more about interaction design and usability, etc. Will it stand up to the demands of this kind of use case? I'm going to play a little video here, which hopefully everyone can see. We had some prior experience in this space. So you're looking at a public user study we did in the US last year. We've got the screen there. You'll notice that black box below the screen, which is our haptics array. And these are short, immersive pieces of advertising. So they're interactive movie posters, fundamentally. And this was a trial in a US cinema chain to kind of see how these things went down. Short, playful experiences, and success with these kind of things is, of course, all about engagement and dwell time. And people are doing things like controlling a little 3D hand to shoot lightning or play with water or something like that. From a design perspective, what was fascinating is we learned a lot about first use with a new technology in a totally unfamiliar way of interacting. People walking up to this thing and having to work out what it is, where they're supposed to stand, what they're supposed to do with it pretty quickly, or they're going to lose interest. We learned a lot about partly the industrial design and the on-screen stuff, but all the different signifiers that might say to you what this thing is and what you're supposed to do with it. So we went into this project armed with some knowledge from that study, but that was as close as we were. And when you get into the world of kiosks, suddenly this is way harder. In a use case like this, success is about short time, high reliability, the widest possible range of users. So when we consider the user's point of view in this case, it's very different. They've got a clear task, they're stressed, distracted, they might have luggage, they might have kids, the train might be about to leave, there might be a queue, and all manner of things stacking up to mean that this person has a much more high stress situation. Their own money is on the line as well. They're going to buy something, they don't want to get it wrong. So these are the kind of challenges we've been trying to face. In scenarios like this, and I'm going to show train ticket machine, but I'm also considering, ATMs and food and all that kind of thing. How does the user know this is a touchless device? And how do they know what to do with it? And can they get that train ticket before the train leaves? So our team was trying to first answer two main questions. One, what is the right way to interact with a machine like this? How do you push a button in midair? And how do we teach people to use it in a matter of seconds? So again, Aki mentioned the importance of prototyping and testing, and that's what we've been doing a lot of this year. So that picture in the center is one of our prototype kiosk rigs. You might notice there's a little black and white arm above the screen. That's temporarily housing our camera. So that's what works the magic. If that camera can see you and can see your hands, you can do hand tracking. And these are some of the different signifiers that we were experimenting and testing with to see how effective they were for people. So on the left, printed instructions, fairly straightforward. The white thing on screen is an on-screen animation, which I'm going to get a bit more into in a moment. Both of these things are trying to communicate that it's touchless, that you position yourself in this place and the kind of way you interact with it. And then that mat on the floor with the footprints is to see if we can encourage people to stand in the right place, because you need the camera to be able to see your hands in order to get the best experience out of this thing. So we've been experimenting with this stuff. We've been user testing it, obviously, iterating and iterating, trying to see in 2-3 seconds flat, can we communicate that it's a touchless device, where people position their bodies and how they operate it. Now, what we've ended up with after many months of work is something a bit like this. So this on-screen animation was turning out to be one of the most important things. People will largely ignore the printed instructions. Some people look at it, they're straight into the screen. That's kind of what they're expecting from touchscreen use. So we've ended up iterating on an animation that is trying to deliver a lot of information with the lowest possible cognitive load. I don't want to read a lot. I don't want to look at a lot of different panels. This says it's touchless with a title, with a word that resonates with a lot of people. You see roughly where you've got to stand. You see that you've got to hold your hand roughly in the air and you get a sense of distance. It shows you how to operate the kiosk, and I'll get more into that in a moment as well. And then another important addition is that we made it so that people have to perform the action once in order to dismiss this screen. Before we did that, we had this screen disappearing as people walk up to the machine, and we would find that it had gone before they'd taken it in. By getting people to dismiss it with the actual gesture, we form a little practice run. And it means when people get into the real UI, they're pushing those buttons with a lot more confidence. Any designers on the call will probably notice this is all grayscale, black and white, Ultraleap branded stuff. That this is demonstrating the format of what we're finding works. We're now working with customers to implement this for them in different ways. So how does this work as a video? How does this work in different branding? How does this work with advertising, etc.? But fundamentally, we've got a format that works and helps people learn this stuff in a few seconds. Then the next big question was, what's the best way to push a button in midair when you can't actually feel any glass or feel any button? So we trialed and tested 3 different methods of doing this over the summer. Again, we need to find something that's super robust, that's going to work for the widest possible range of people, that's not going to frustrate anybody. This first one, which we call hover and hold, was really the first thing we tried. I should explain that black dot, in case it wasn't clear, is a cursor. So what our product does fundamentally is overlays that cursor on top of the touchscreen UI that's there. As your hand is detected, the cursor appears, and as you move your hand, the cursor moves with you. In the case of hover and hold, as you pause over a button, that little wheel loads and then the selection is made at that point. And the theory was that this will be easy because people have the least to learn, right? They've just got to point at whatever button. And whilst we found that people really got it and understood the cursor and what was happening, they were frustrated with the speed. There's a little wait, and I'm used to touchscreens, which are quicker. They also didn't always feel they had full agency. They were guiding the cursor to the button, but it was a bit like the cursor made the choice, not them. So this wasn't quite doing the job for us. Now, the next one we tried is a pinch gesture. There's a bit of history to pinch at Ultraleap. We've used it quite a lot, quite successfully in VR, and we've also used it in in-car interfaces, which is what I'm showing you here. It's an early prototype of car interface. Now, the reason we use something like this is that your hands are analog devices. Unlike a mouse button, there's no clear on and off state. You go through a whole range of motion as you shift between hand poses. And we have to be able to detect very accurately when you meant to do a thing. So we need to understand user intent very well. We don't want to get it wrong and, you know, you're scratching your nose and we think you were intending to push a button and next thing you know, the car's doing something different. That just would never be acceptable. So in the early days, we started trying out hand poses that were very distinctive, and pinch was one of them. It's not one that you make naturally or accidentally, and as such, it's a very reliable thing to do. And it works very well in VR for, say, picking up a small object, etc. Or in the case of the car interface here, for moving a slider up and down to, say, control the volume of the music or something. So it's very robust because it's not something you do that often naturally. However, apply that to a kiosk and that doesn't really work as well. So in our testing, yeah, this was easy to detect, but frankly, this is a weird way to push a button. It's a bit of an abstract thing that people aren't used to doing. So very quickly, we're finding this wasn't working. We also learned that when we ask people to make a pinch, you get a very wide range of hand poses from, you know, one finger and thumb together to a whole clenched fist. So really, again, this was just too much of a hurdle. This might be something that in years to come, you can gradually introduce as the tech becomes more commonplace, but right now, too much. So what really worked for us was what we call the air push. This is definitely proving to be the most natural and intuitive thing to do, largely because it leans on touch screen interactions that you're used to. It's like pushing that glass, but I'm just doing it in midair. You can see here the cursor is doing something a bit different. There's a concentric ring here, and that's giving you feedback that as you move forward to push that button, the system has recognized that, and that button press will happen for you. And users are finding that very reassuring in our tests. You'll probably also notice that the button reacts, or sometimes we've even had a little pulse come out of the cursor at the point of pushing that button. And that's because we're finding in touchless interaction, users need a little bit more feedback to know that actions worked. When you touch a glass screen, you know you hit that screen, you can feel it. And when we add haptics into the mix, that can deliver that confirmation you need. But if you don't have haptics, as was the case in this project, you've got to do something visually to really give people that extra feedback. So this works largely on velocity. We recognize the motion of your hand, the speed that you go forward, and it means you can do it fairly comfortably from any kind of position, most distances. So it works for a wide range of users. So we've got to a point where we've identified a sort of a package of instructional information that really works, and we've got a good interaction that works for pushing buttons reliably. That lets us use that for the majority of kiosks out in the public space. So in summary, we know that people are concerned about hygiene, especially with COVID, and there's a genuine willingness to try touchless kiosks. We know that we can make them reliable and intuitive if we do things in a way that minimizes the amount of effort and learning people have to put in, but not to underestimate the amount of learning that's there. This is a totally unfamiliar way of interacting, and people have quite a lot to get their heads around in the first few seconds. We do find that once people have pushed their first couple of buttons, like something clicks and they're there. But it's those first few seconds that can be difficult, particularly if you're expecting a touch screen and you're under stress. The on-screen animation is proving very effective at getting users started very smoothly. And those footprints on the floor were helping people to stand in the right place. And we're now doing further work to try different formats for those to see how we can optimize that for sort of different situations. So for example, you can't put something on the floor. What do you do there? And then we've learned that the air push interaction is definitely the best way to go pushing a button. And we're leaning on those kind of learned touchscreen behaviors to try and ease people into this sort of new way of interacting. So I said we started in March and we had till October to deliver a proof of concept. And I'm so proud of the team, we did it. We launched our product, which is called Touch Free, in mid-October. It's a retrofit or conversion kit for public touchscreen kiosks. So you buy an Ultraleap camera, mount it above the screen, you install the free software, Touch Free, and you've just converted any touchscreen into a touchless device. And what we're doing is overlaying that cursor on top and overlaying the animation that I just showed you. So let me just show you guys this in action. So there's that start and animation that I showed you. This demo of a train ticket machine is here. You can see the white cursor is overlaid, and this person is using the air push gesture to put in a code and collect their train tickets. And they can do it at a speed that's pretty comparable to a touchscreen. We built in settings to fine tune these interactions for different sizes of screens and kiosks, to customize the animation and customize the cursor to suit brands, hit the right visual contrast, that kind of thing. And we're kind of there as a first step. Now we're moving up to large-scale user trials. The team have moved on to further interactions, so things like swipes, maps, and signatures, etc. But fundamentally, that's what we've spent the year doing, and we're super proud of it. Did it in 6 months, did it in a pandemic too, which isn't easy. And it's really exciting work, frankly, as a designer, to try and start figuring out just what is the best way to interact with this tech in a really kind of practical way that works for people. So I'm going to stop there, and I look forward to answering some questions, talking to you guys further.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Matt. I know we've got a few questions streaming in. I think I might take the liberty to ask you one, and then we'll move on to Catherine. Yeah, we'll just change the flow slightly. So there's a whole bunch of interesting ones here. I think, and I'm just looking at the ones that have been upvoted. So, all right, let's ask a relatively easy one, hopefully, that I'm guessing you've thought about, which is, how do you stop people touching the touchless kiosk? I don't know, in some sense, that doesn't actually matter, does it? Because if they want to risk it, they can risk it. But you have the option for people to do it hygienically as well. But what do you take on that?
No, good question. Well, fundamentally, you don't have to. So it still works as a touchscreen. You can choose to do either. And we have had situations, particularly as people are learning it, where they're doing some of it this way, and they might just be like, oh, hell, I'm just going into the touchscreen. And gradually, we're trying to build their confidence with the touchless interactions so that they wean them off the touchscreen, as it were. I think those various signifiers I talked about seem to be working pretty well. Once people get where they've got to stand roughly, and I put my body here, I hold my hand up, we generally find once they've pressed 2 buttons successfully, they've pretty much got it. Yeah. And at that point, and it's quite fun, frankly, it's quite, an interesting new thing to do. So once they've got the hang of that, we find they're happy to continue with it. But if they want to touch that screen, there's nothing stopping them.
Yeah, and I can certainly imagine in environments, as you say, that are meant to be more fun anyway, such as museum interactions, actually there's going to be a preference to try and do it without touching. But okay, great, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that. It is truly phenomenal to see what a huge amount of work the Ultraleap have been able to do over this summer period while we've all been in panic mode. So thank you. Okay, all right, Catherine, I'm going to hand over to you now, because this is a really nice flow to everything today, because Ocean Outdoor have actually now gone that step further and implemented some of this touchless technology in real life campaigns. So I'm very excited to hear a bit more from the work of Catherine and the whole labs team at Ocean Outdoor, who are really pushing what we can do in advertising. So over to you, Catherine. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks, Emily. Hopefully you can all see my screen already. But just to quickly introduce myself, so I'm the director of Ocean Labs at Ocean Outdoor. And we work with a whole host of different technology suites, and we apply them to our large format and small format digital out of home portfolio to create interactive and immersive experience for advertising brands and consumers. Today, I'm specifically going to talk about 3 areas of technology, all of which lean into offering touchless interactivity and COVID-safe interactions within the space and the world that we're very much living in at the moment. So moving on, the first area I'm going to talk about is haptics. So leading on from Matt's really fascinating talk about the 2 different products within the Ultraleap portfolio, I'm going to be leaning more towards the mid-air haptic side of things. So when I talk about this technology, when I'm talking specifically to advertisers and brands, I group it in 3 broad ways. So firstly, the option to use technology for personalization. Secondly, immersive storytelling. And thirdly, gamification. So for personalization, you saw some examples that Matt shared there as well. But this example here, obviously our designer was feeling quite hungry at the time, definitely a burger theme to the presentation generally, was an example here of how you could create your own burger. So with this example, you can see the Stratos Midair Haptics Ultraleap machine there that you hold your hand over, and the idea would be that you'd customize a product. Now this example is a burger, it could be a car, it could be an outfit, it could be anything like that. But the idea is that you're interacting and immersing with a giant digital screen. So here you might have the bun as an example. You might feel a circle on your hand as you pick that up and move that into the screen. And then the patty, potentially if that's hot, you might feel again a circle, but maybe like a bubbling or fizzling sensation on your hand as that's hot, and you customize the different elements, and then you create something that you could then go, maybe with a QR code, go and purchase in store. Another example here, immersive storytelling, and Matt showed some really great examples. I think it was a Shazam cinema poster where, again, they use the same concept of the fact that you're seeing a digital poster effectively, but you're inviting consumers to immerse themselves and to actually experience sensations within that. So again, here you'd put your hand over and you could maybe feel an electrical vibration on your hand as you're moving and controlling and interacting with that poster. And that's really just to say about immersing people within the experience and giving something different to a consumer. And lastly, gamification. And here I'm going to share a recent campaign example, which Emily mentioned as a campaign that actually went live the weekend before last for Lego at Westfield and Stratford that we worked on with the Ultraleap team. So here you can see there in the bottom, we created a experiential stand made of giant pieces of Lego, where families could go and take part and build different Lego models during that time. And I think what's really interesting here is it's a different experience to those stress moments that Matt described, where you need a really simple, quick activation that needs to be quite straightforward in its approach. Whereas here we had more time with the participants, at least 5 to 10 minutes with each person taking part. So we're able to, I guess, make a more complex interaction, more complex build, and use different gestures, different awards, and a different experience. So it shows a variety of ways that you can apply the technology depending on the situation that you're in. So here again, COVID safety being a primary concern. The stand was designed again with this in mind, being outdoors with airflow throughout. You can see they're obviously using touchless technology, brand ambassadors with face visors. We had hand sanitizer. We had a one-way system, so you came one way, went out the other, and a socially distanced queue. So, and what was great is that people absolutely loved it. We were overwhelmed with the number of people queuing to take part throughout the weekend when it was live. And I think it just goes to show, if you can create experiences where people feel comfortable, you're doing it in a responsible way, they're desperate and craving these kind of immersive and interactive experiences. So which was really fantastic to see. And here I've created some visualizations of the kind of things that people were experiencing. So one of the sequences at the beginning of the interactive experience, you were able to select the different models that you wanted to make, because the whole idea of the Rebuild the World campaign for Lego was that you might buy a model of a train, but actually that can be made into so many different things as well. So you're rebuilding that same Lego set into multiple different things. So the first experience was where the consumers could go and they had 3 different 1x1 Lego blocks that were on the screen, and they could hover their hand over each of those, which were in a fixed 3D space in mid-air, and feel the Lego blocks, and then select the one they wanted to actually use. And just a rough visualization here. So obviously a Lego block is quite an iconic shape. So we're able to play with that as part of the experience. So we're able to replicate the circle on the hand, the iconic stud of the Lego block. And then when you moved your hand to the side, you could feel a force field for the side of the Lego blocks. Now, it's a rough shape. It's not 100% accurate, as I'm sure you can appreciate, but when you're seeing that with the visuals on screen and feeling and having that sensory feedback, that's where it really comes to life. Now, I'm going to attempt to show a video now, which I'm hoping will work for me. Fingers crossed. Let's give this a try. So I hope you'll agree, a really, really fun campaign. As I mentioned, it was quite a complex build, but I think given the right context and environment and situation, with brand ambassadors there to help you and guide you, I think you can deliver quite more complex builds and really immersive experiences using that technology. And as I say, the participants absolutely loved it. And I think there's something almost magical about it, which is really great. So moving on to our next technology. So this is Lookout, which is our facial detection technology, which uses cameras across our network, where they look out from the screen and they can detect different things about faces in front of the screen. So just to be clear, it's not facial recognition. So we have no ability to record any footage or recognize individuals. So if you looked away from the screen and looked back, we would think you were two different people. But what it does allow us to do is to optimize content and deliver more immersive experience or interactive experiences based on different characteristics. So this is an example here that we ran for Swarovski. Here where we had different coloured floor vinyls, you might be able to see there in the bottom, just on the floor where people stood. With the camera here, we masked off different areas in the camera. And then if a face was detected standing within the proportions and coordinates of that masked off area, then it would light up the creative in the colour of that particular floor vinyl that you were standing on. So again, using that gaze time interaction that Aki referenced at the beginning to actually control and interact with a giant screen or even a small format screen. We've also been running at Westfield, through our partners there, been running socially distanced campaigns using again the same technology, using about positions and using the camera feed that we have there to create an augmented reality experience, obviously a very simple one in this case. And this was really just a playful way to remind people of the importance of social distancing. So when you're walking in front of the screen, a white circle appeared around you with a 2-meter radius, and then when your circle crossed with someone else's circle, then it went red. So if you were too close, it just reminded you to socially distance. Again, just a really different way that landlords and consumers and councils can use the technology just to remind people to socially distance, and if they're not, maybe just to take a step back and make sure they're doing that. And also mobile technology. So again, the idea of the private screen working with the public screen. So we actually have a network of fibre Wi-Fi networks across our estate, across the UK, where people could go on, log in and interact. And it could be something very simple like this example here, where you could download a specific discount code based on logging into the Wi-Fi. And we all wish we could be traveling the world right now, but sadly not. But that's an example of the kind of thing that you can do. We do a lot of work with publishers where they're logging in, downloading a first chapter of a book where you can go on and purchase, as an example. But the reason I'm mentioning it specifically in this example is how we can use it for interactive campaigns. So we can use that Wi-Fi to host web-based interactions and really act as that vehicle for interactivity. So the example that you can see on the screen here in Manchester, this was for Sky Ocean Rescue, where there would be a call to action on the screen to say log on to the Wi-Fi to reveal, in this case, was a message saying the ocean's biggest killer. So you'd log into the Wi-Fi, your phone handset would then be turned into a torch. You'd be told to turn the on button, and then using the accelerometer in your handset, you'd move your handset from left to right. So you can see the directions on the screen there to reveal the ocean's biggest killer, which was actually, when you shone your torch on it, a load of floating plastic in the sea. And what was really nice here was the participant was then given afterwards, they were redirected to a page where they could find out more about Sky Ocean Rescue and what they do to take away with themselves and act on later. So that's just one example here. I've also got another example here, which I'll, again, hopefully attempt to share a video with you, which was for Compassion in World Farming, completely and utterly crazy campaign where we live streamed to a field where there were pigs on the field. We'd set up this Wallace and Gromit style feeding device that threw apples to pigs. You actually paid to take part in this campaign. So you paid £1 to donate to the charity. You could log in via Facebook with your profile picture. You had a little queue where there's multiple participants and you could share your good work on social afterwards. So I'm going to attempt to play the video. Hopefully this will work.
be. And if I was a tree growing tall and green, all I'd want to do to shade me and be my leaves. If you were a river in the mountains tall, the rumble of your water would be my call. If you were the winter, I know I'd be the snow, just as long as you're with me when the cold winds blow. All I want is you, will you be my bride? Take me by the hand and stand by my side. All I want is you, will you stay with me? Hold me in your arms and sway me like the sea. If you were a wink, I'd be a nod. If you were a seed, well, I'd be a pod. If you were a floor, I'd wanna be the rug. And if you were a kiss, I know I'd be a hug. All I want is you, will you be my bride? Take me by the hand and stand by my side. All I want is you, will you stay with me? Hold me in your arms and sway me like the sea. If you were the wood, I'd be the fire. If you were the love, I'd be the desire. If you were a vessel, I'd be your mold. And if you were an ocean, I'd learn to float. All I want is you, will you be my bride? Take me by the hand and stand by my side. All I want is you, will you stay with me? Hold me in your arms and sway me like a sea. That's brilliant.
Well, that always, it's a few years old, but that always makes me smile, that video. I think who doesn't love a pig? And I would just say that no pigs or mobile phones were hurt in the making of that campaign. Luckily, no one threw anything. But I think what's really nice about all the three of those areas that I've spoken about, the haptics, the lookouts, and the mobile interaction, is they all work on linking the physical to the digital. And that's something I'm personally, if anyone's heard me talk before, I'm a massive fan of. And I think there is something really engaging and magical about that. And particularly when you're working and interacting with a giant digital billboard effectively, I think that that's something, you know, really unique and engaging. And I think for a brand to be part of that is a really wonderful thing. And speaking of which, I did just want to share one little snippet as my last thing before I hand you over, which is a little snippet from our neuroscience research. So we've done quite a lot of research in this area, but the one thing I did just want to share was specifically about interactivity. But just in case anyone's not sure about what neuroscience research is, it's literally where you put sensors on people's heads and areas of the brain that connect to your memory sensors or emotional responses, and then you show them advertising in this particular case, or interactive advertising, and see how those different areas of the brain are stimulated when you expose them to that. And the idea of using neuroscience rather than asking people questions is it's all about the right hand area of the brain, which is linked to emotion. And that's what really drives memory encoding. If you ask people questions, they censor it through the left-hand side of their brain. So this is the way that we can really actually truly understand what's happening. So in this stat here, just the one I wanted to share with you, we looked at the effect of full motion digital advertising, which in this case we put as our baseline at 100, and then compared with when you do interactive advertising. And on a whole, we have broken this down by different areas, but the one stat as culminating all together here was that it showed a 3 times greater impact in terms of memory encoding when you actually use technology with digital out of home in these interactive experiences. So I think I just wanted to share that, because not only are these experiences fun, but they actually work for brands as well. So people are much more likely to remember and engage with your advertising when you actually do these kind of experiences as well. So that's all for me today. So thank you ever so much. I'm going to hand you back to Emily now, who will, oh, my cursor's disappeared. If you're able to stop me sharing my screen for me, sorry, my cursor has disappeared.
Let me have a look at that. I'm sure I can. Thank you so much, Catherine. Brilliant. Okay, there we go. All done. That's I just say that pig campaign. You can't help but have a giggle there. It's really. I mean, for us as Digital Catapult, that's the ultimate example, I think, of a lot of our technologies coming together for the power of advertising and interactivity. So it's really great to see how Ocean Outdoor and particularly obviously your lab are pushing these boundaries and accepting the fact that things are changing, and consumers do want to be entertained in different ways in order to continue their kind of purchasing journey. So we're going to have time for a few more questions at the end. Actually, just looking across at one there, I think one of those top ones has definitely been immediately answered, which was around the use of personal devices. And obviously Catherine was really able to show there how they've been looking at the two coming together to control those large screens, which I think is something that is incredibly fun. It brings out the child in all of us. So we will come to a few more questions. First though, we're just going to have one more quick presentation, because actually something that's timed in rather nicely is that Digital Catapult have just released a brand new short report about the state of the haptics ecosystem in the UK. So as mentioned at the beginning, a big part of what we do at Digital Catapult is really keeping an eye on some of the technologies that are trending from the startup perspective, as well as from enterprise adoption. And today has been all about touchless and haptics. And so I'm going to hand over to my colleague Alicia, who's one of our research and policy analysts, who can tell us just a few of those highlights. And then obviously you're all very welcome to go and download that report. It's all free to catch up on who's doing what in the haptic space. But Alicia, please do give us a little highlight summary, and then we'll catch up with everyone after that to ask a few more questions. Thank you.
Will do. Thanks for the introduction, Emily. I'm just going to share my screen and then we should be able to get going. Right, all good? Perfect.
Yeah, all good. We can see that. Great, thank you.
So yeah, just as Emily already mentioned, I'm Alicia. I'm a research and policy analyst here. I work mostly on the creative sphere, but also do some cross-technology research pieces. And I'm going to just look at the top level insights of my paper. I'll also link it down below in the comments section if you want to have quick access to it. And so just starting off, we've talked a lot about haptics, but I think it's important to kind of break down where haptics can be applied and what the different kind of niches there are. So first of all, there's human haptics, talked about, I think, a lot by Matt. So being able to perceive touch, for example, with their ultrasound, being able to feel something in midair. So generating touch even though there's nothing there. Secondly, is computational haptics, which is Aki talked about a little bit more, so be able to generate touch within a virtual environment. So even though the thing that you're looking at, for example, in a game such as an enemy, doesn't actually exist, but you can still touch what you would expect it to feel like. Or if you're being shot by a bullet, it would give you kind of like a reaction as if, not the same level as being shot, but to a similar kind of like a feedback level. And then finally, there's haptics machines. So this looks at the design of machinery to replace human touch. So one of the most interesting examples of this is for surgery. So you could have an expert surgeon at one side of the world controlling a robot, which then at the other side of the world, the patient on the operating table is being operated by someone hundreds and hundreds of miles away. So that, has brilliant uses for factories, so the safeness of factories, and also for applications within the medical sphere. And then thinking about a little bit about who operates in this space, I'm just going to touch on this quickly, but there's more detail in the report. So enterprise, so tech giants such as Apple and Facebook have been looking in this for a long time. For example, really basic haptics is when you type on your phone screen and there's no actual keyboard, but you can feel the vibration of the keys. That's how haptics really started. But now people like Facebook and Apple have got some really exciting patents out. So looking into how 3D touch can enhance user experiences. For example, being able to beam a keyboard onto any surface and use it as a keyboard from your phone without any needed buttons. And then research institutions, actually quite a lot of interesting stuff is happening in the UK at the moment. For example, down in Sussex, they're looking at computer human interaction, not only for touch, but also looking at taste, which is super exciting. And then also places like Imperial College London have entire kind of facilities based on haptics research. And then what we do here at Digital Catapult, looking mostly at the startups and scale-ups, we've worked with people such as Ultraleap before, and there's quite a large UK haptics community covering different verticals, as we've mentioned before: fashion, retail, virtual reality, healthcare, robotics, all kind of across the different verticals. It's quite agnostic as a technology. And then looking at the startup and scale up investment, we as a company have worked with 5 haptics companies that have either been on our showcase, applied for a showcase, or been on one of our programs. So for example, we've heard from Matt from Ultraleap. They were on our first ever haptics showcase, and they managed to raise, and this is 2019 numbers, 74.4 million in equity investment. That's not counting their acquisition by Leap Motion for 23.8 million. But in total, the 5 companies have raised over £101 million in investment in the last 5 years, which is crazy for just 5 companies working with us. So clearly haptics is a very lucrative and exciting kind of technology to look into and to watch for the future. And then some key trends. So some key trends that are all in the kind of the rhetoric and the literature at the moment to look out for, which I think are super exciting. First of all, haptic wellness. So there's lots of things like, you know, your smartwatch, smart shoes, smart clothing, things like that. And that's going to play, so haptics are going to have a huge role in the development of things like mental health and smart apps, and also for fitness. So there's a really cool ring that's come out that helps you sleep. So you put the ring on, and then in the morning it sends certain haptic vibrations to mimic what your heart rate would change when you're normally going to wake up, to help those with insomnia who don't want to have to use medication. So that's one really interesting use case there. And then haptic surfaces. So we've heard a lot about that from Caroline, and also from Catherine, sorry, and also from Matt. And so like looking at kind of touchless interfaces, lack of buttons, and kind of making a sleek and also more interesting kind of surfaces that doesn't include having to press anything. And then finally, so looking at combination of haptics technology and 5G, so teletouch. So for things like the surgery thing I was talking about, you're going to have to think really carefully about latency, because if you're performing surgery from the other side of the world, you can't have lag. So combining haptic technology and 5G will be a really, really exciting way to allow this kind of remote operation in factories and also in surgeries. And then we've talked a lot about haptic technologies revolutionizing a post-COVID society. I think Matt has talked about it really well already. So thinking about how, you know, touchless interfaces are going to be more important for public needs. And I think there's, you know, haptics will play an essential role in kind of sculpting how we approach kind of like public health and public safety. 85% of the public felt that touchless interfaces would be safer to use in an Ultraleap study, actually. And also 71% of people felt that to the future there'll be more touchless interfaces. So I think combining that with the need for high touch areas in public, such as, you know, kiosks or the supermarket or ticket collection, as Matt already said, these are going to play a huge part in either further lockdowns. So, well, let's hope no more further lockdowns, but let's say until we've got a vaccine, if we can have more touchless interfaces, this will allow us to really keep shops open and keep the economy propped up until we have a vaccine solution. And I think just generally hygiene will be thought about a lot more moving forward, and there'll be a definite need for touchless interfaces and hygiene, if not in public areas, completely, definitely within the healthcare industry. So that was like a really, really quick run through of kind of like a summary of the paper, but I'm going to link the paper back down in the comments so you can get a direct link to it. If not, it's on our website. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and hand back over to Emily.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alicia. And yeah, I really would encourage you all to download that if you can and have a look. Obviously, if anything, really get a taste of some of the startups that are worthwhile talking to at the moment, whether for partnerships or to work with from an enterprise perspective. So, all right, I'm going to invite everyone to come back on, if that's all right, please, so we can all see our little heads again. So turn your videos on. Brilliant. Hello, speakers. Thank you all very much. So we have got about 15 minutes to try and tackle some of these questions, and feel free as well, all of those that are listening, feel free to type in any other new questions. But there's certainly a few that have come up here that people seem to be really interested on. I think one that definitely spiked my interest here from Clements is, how has anyone on the panel had the chance to start looking at more embodied interactions? So really looking at the full body involved rather than just hands, looking at gestures and position in the space. And then again, I guess there's almost a secondary question that maybe is Aki here around how you might imagine prototyping some of these full embodied things. So maybe Matt, I don't know if you've started looking at this wider gesture embodiment.
Yeah, good question. So that's come up more in some of our VR work, where, you know, I was just talking about kiosks where you're standing in a certain space operating a machine in front of you. You know, we've been doing some work with companies that do remote collaboration tools in VR, so having meetings and workshops in a VR environment, and how they might lose the controllers and move to hand tracking. And so how do you navigate yourself around a virtual meeting room? How do you use the whiteboard to talk to your colleagues or whatever? And again, there our goal is the same as it is with the kiosk, is we're trying to establish what's the rule book for best interactions, you know, what are the right gestures for the right job, etc. And again, we're trying to write the rule book because this stuff isn't known hard and fast. I will say that, you know, my background's industrial design, and this starts to become an ergonomic question. So yes, I could make it so that you're sweeping around and jumping, etc. But it depends on the application. In a game, that might be fun. In a virtual reality meeting, I'm going to get tired, or I get uncomfortable, etc. So you know, in that kind of use case, enterprise software or whatever, we lean more towards small, comfortable interactions that won't be straining and won't be tired, which is just general good ergonomic practice, you know. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
Works.
There is an element of what's necessary versus what's possible, isn't there? And yeah, you're right. If we're all doing a full dance in the ticket hall at Paddington, then yeah, there may be. Or
throwing apples to pigs, where it makes far more sense. You know, it depends, I think.
Yeah, depends on the use case. I mean, Aki, I don't know if you've got any more to add in there around how you can think about, again, prototyping some of these kind of larger gesture controls.
Yeah, well, as Matt was implying, it is possible. I mean, there are technologies there, even the standalone VR headsets at the moment do enable room scale movement. But I think the challenge is really in the false positives. So I think Matt was telling us how difficult it's even to, you know, detect the granular pinch. And then when you make the movement set of sequences more complex, it really only, I think, fits feasibly those kinds of sort of fun applications that Catherine was showing. That said, I mean, I'm a big believer in the so-called embodied cognition, which is this idea that we learn not only and understand things not only with our brains but with our bodies. So, and that's one of the reasons, for instance, that virtual reality training is so effective, that if you make people adopt almost like a muscle memory through a set of movements that will impact how they are able to perform that set of tasks or whatever going forward. So yeah, that's my 5 cents.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point around exactly whether we can just start to learn new habits, as you say, with muscle memory, that will just be indicative of how we behave in some of these scenarios. Catherine, there's a few questions coming up here. Well, someone is definitely asking around and then you might have touched on it in one of your stats, but how many people really engaged and fed the pigs in that example? What was your, I guess, what were some of the stats in terms of how many people you think looked at it, which was really cool just because obviously it was more engaging to look at, versus how many people actually got their hands dirty and got involved?
I think, well, the campaign ran, I believe it was only for 2 days, and it was actually only 2 hours a day, because obviously thinking about pig welfare. We didn't want to feed them, so I think it was at 10 to 11 and 3 till 2 in the afternoon. So so it was actually only 4 hours in total, but we had 500 participants take part during that time, which I think is a really good number. And if you think each of those participants actually donating £1 to the charity to take part as well, so you know, a really great one. And I think it also mentions in the video there was about 500,000 people potentially who saw the campaign throughout that time as well, based on footfall numbers as well.
Yeah, okay. So that, I mean, it is a really interesting concept, I think, at the moment, in terms of the. This is more just coming from myself, but what do you think the general trends are anyway, in terms of, are we as consumers becoming desensitized to things like billboards if they're not interactive, because of the fact that, you know, there's so many more in our lives, there's so many standing adverts around, including all the ones that we see, of course, online and on our phones. But I mean, do you think we're at the point where to actually get any sort of real feedback and interaction with the consumer, or engagement with the consumer, you do need to have that bit of special sauce? Is the tide turning in that sense?
I think there's still quite a lot of research that's showing they still work, and particularly when you're using full motion creative. When I say full motion, like a video file basically, rather than static, I think they're still eye-catching. But I do think the bar has definitely been raised in terms of consumers' expectations of brands and how they interact with them, whether that even be just from a more simplistic perspective, using live data to look at the context. Is it raining at that moment? Therefore, you might want to see an ad or an experience that's relevant to that, or to the mindset or of the city at that moment, or something that's contextually relevant. But also, I think in terms of immersive experiences, and I think experience-led interaction, whether it be experiential or digital-faced interaction, is something that we're all wanting, and we see it in other areas of the world, like the immersive cinemas, all those kind of experiences. And I think for brands to be part of that, or in a little way, I think, you know, that you create those experiences and create those brand advocates from people who've had amazing times that they then want to share. So maybe you only get 500 people who have taken part throwing apples to pigs as an example, but actually those 500 people have had a really fun, cool experience that then they're going to share with lots of their followers and friends on social as well. So I think it's about amplifying those experiences as well. But you're absolutely right. I think the bar has been raised in consumer expectation.
Yeah, okay. No, it's interesting, as you say. It's not just about what we're seeing with the outdoor space, but then also, you know, the kinds of adverts that we're actually seeing working on our phones and in a digital sense as well. And there is, I think, there's great power in what you actually described, which is this idea of being able to connect between digital and the physical. And again, that feels like it resonates more than ever right now, where we all feel very, very isolated and very, very segregated. Just out of interest, are there any other, I guess, future ideas around how you could bring interactivity between different people around the world, with the kinds of, obviously the pig thing's brilliant and it's kind of a one-way interaction, being able to feed the pigs, but are there any other types of advertising where you actually might be able to take that a step further and look at the interactivity between people in the UK and, I don't know, Africa or wherever?
Absolutely. So we do, through the Wi-Fi, we've got fibre lines, so we can live stream between multiple locations. So again, it's not something that's really properly been done yet, but I think it's a great opportunity to do something really cool, whether it's through different locations or cities in the UK, or, as you say, internationally. I mean, it'd be great to have even like haptics Lego build as an example between different cities, people competing against each other, and kind of a little league table to create some like healthy competition or something fun through multiple cities. But absolutely that two-way interaction and people seeing it, and the idea of connecting, as we're all connecting now through different cameras, and again applying that technology at scale and creating something really fun is absolutely possible.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I think it leaves a lot of kind of hope for all of us that you know, even if travel is reduced, there will be new means. All right. There's definitely a very great question coming through in regards to accessibility and wheelchair use, and actually that's something, Alicia, I wondered if anything came up in trends that you saw with the report around haptics technology that is almost kind of opening up access, or allowing people to feel that maybe haven't been able to fully have that capacity before. And I know that's, sorry, on the spot question there, but were there any trends that came through in terms of the startups that we're seeing and how they're addressing
yeah, really interestingly, I spoke to the Royal National Institute for the Blind when I was conducting my research, and they said they were doing quite a lot of work into haptics. So less on the reduced mobility factor, but helping those that are either partially sighted or blind be able to use haptics, and it allows them to almost see screens, for example, in public and access it. If they have like it's like a voice description and then mid-air haptic solution, quite often that was actually much better for them, and they're really looking into trying to roll that out across the world. They started in galleries, so having that in galleries of like some of the greatest sculptures, and they could feel the sculpture using the mid-air haptics to replace them. Sometimes they have models, little models of people of the sculptures. And then another thing to do with accessibility was for the deaf. So one haptics company was building haptics flooring. So if you went to a nightclub or a concert, it would have the beat of the music through the floor. So those who are deaf could hear, well, not hear, but be able to feel the beat of the music and have the same immersive experiences as the rest of the crowd. And so I think there's definitely lots of work towards accessibility. When it comes to reduced mobility, I've seen less towards that side of things, but there's definitely lots of progress along kind of finding different routes for different people and their abilities.
That's cool. That's really cool to hear. And you're right, that kind of haptics floor it feels like it's that one step on from, we've certainly seen haptics backpacks that augment the sound when you're listening to music, but to really make it a location experience would be a lot of fun. That's great to hear. I mean, Matt, I don't know, from the Ultraleap perspective, is this a consideration that's been going on and into some of the continued design work that you're doing?
It absolutely is, and I'll start by saying that's something I'm pretty passionate about. So I absolutely believe that this stuff's just got to be considered from the start, and that was kind of reinforced with some of the kiosk work, where I was looking at touchscreen kiosks and looking at their accessibility mode, and some of them were okay, some of them were definitely a pretty rubbish afterthought, where the UI is just squashed down to a few buttons at the bottom and stuff. So there's a few things going on. It's still early days, I'll say that. We haven't established the right way to do it, because as you just saw, we're figuring out the basics. We're involved in a work group with a standards body at the minute to look into limited mobility and how that might affect things. So a lot of that is in VR. For example, like the situation I talked about with the VR meeting, does that work if you are seated the entire time? Stuff like that. When you get over to kiosks and the like of that, I think there is the real potential here to improve the experience and not make, let's say, if someone's in a wheelchair, that they don't get a poorer experience. So, our tech works by detecting a hand, seeing it as imagery. If you have hands, even if you're lower down or in a different position, that can still work fine for you. And haptics does, as Alicia mentioned, haptics really helps here as well. It gives you that extra confirmation. So if you're visually impaired, we're starting to see how haptics can really help you here, give you certainty of that you're hovering over the button or whatever it may be. But still, it's definitely still early days. So it's something we're considering. We're trying to figure out along with all the other basics of these interactions. But yeah, absolutely want that to be part of the solution.
Yeah, okay, it's good to, it does feel like progress. There's certainly in terms of, again, kind of disabled people being able to access information in public spaces. It feels like there hasn't actually been that much development in regards to technology for a very long time. So it's an exciting prospect in that sense too. All right, I'm going to ask one more question. I don't know, speakers, was there anything else that you saw on the questions panel that you particularly wanted to comment on? Otherwise,
maybe one. There was a question about audio feedback and stuff, and yes, I think it relates to the sort of broader issue that many of these solutions have. That where is it a public social context, or is it a private context and like a private situation where the user is using their own device? And many of the sort of possibilities and opportunities for feedback relate to that. So it's very difficult to give audio feedback in a public space where there's background noise for your individual choice, for instance. And that's like the whole reasoning behind some of these technologies. But then if we assume that the end user has, let's say in the future, some kind of a wearable device where you can send that individual private feedback. But the same also has to do with whether you want to use your public device or so your private device in connection with the public screen. It depends all on the type of information. If there's any sensitivity with the information, you don't want that to show up on the screen and all that kind of stuff. One more thing about audio is that there are studies that relate that from an evolutionary perspective, hearing is quite closely connected to touch. So there's some studies out there that using a certain frequency of sound, you can actually create an impression of our sense of touch. So there's lots of opportunities there going forward with these haptic technologies to amplify their sort of fidelity with sound, but it's very much like R&D and work in progress.
All right, that is fascinating. I mean, makes sense. I think you can feel that same kind of prickly feeling down your back from touch and from sound. So yeah, okay, gosh, all right. Well, I realise the time, so I think we better wrap it up there. But thank you so much, Catherine, Matt, Aki, and Alicia. Thank you all for contributing today. Thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. I know it's an odd time for all of us, so we really appreciate everyone coming together. Feel free to get in touch. We will be sharing, we're going to record it or it is recorded, but we'll be sending it out and you can send it on to peers and friends, etc. But meanwhile, please do stay safe, stay in touch with Catapult, let us know what you're up to, and we will be back with more masterclasses as well over the coming months, which we'll keep you updated about. So thank you, everyone. All right, all the best. Have a great week. Have a great lockdown.